Have you noticed how retirement feels less like rest and more like erasure? One day your essential people need your expertise, your wisdom, your 40 years of experience, and the next day you're sitting at your kitchen table at 6 a.m., dressed for meetings that will never come, wondering if your entire purpose just expired. They throw you a beautiful party, standing ovation, gold watch, promises to carry on your legacy. Then Monday arrives, and the world continues. Without you, your replacement sends cheerful updates about exciting new directions. While you're left wondering if everything you built was just a pencil sketch, someone's now I'm here to tell you something the retirement books won't. That emptiness you're feeling isn't failure. It's labor pain. Something new is being born, but it can't arrive until you release your death grip on who you used to be. Your calling didn't retire when your career ended, it's transforming, deepening, flowing into channels you couldn't perceive when you were rushing. I'll create a powerful, original script for I thought my calling was over. Soul Flowing proved me wrong, with a fresh protagonist and unique approach to the retirement purpose theme. Patricia Chun sat at her kitchen table at 6:15 a.m., dressed for a meeting that would never come. Her coffee cooled untouched as rain streaked the window, each drop marking time she no longer knew how to fill. For 30 years, Monday mornings had meant staff meetings, grant deadlines, youth waiting for programs she'd built from nothing. Now Monday meant silence thick enough to drown in. The house felt cavernous. Her husband had left for his consulting work an hour ago, the garage door's rumble fading into a quiet that pressed against her chest. She opened her laptop out of habit, then closed it immediately. No emails needed her anymore. No crises required her expertise. The nonprofit she'd poured 3 decades into had thrown a beautiful retirement party, gold watch, standing ovation, promises to carry on your legacy, and then the world had simply continued. Without her, Patricia's fingers traced the edge of her planner, still color-coded with a system no one needed anymore. She'd thought retirement would feel like rest, like completion. Instead, it felt like erasure, as if everything she'd built, every life she'd touched, had been a pencil sketch someone was slowly rubbing away. "Is this it, God?" she whispered to the empty kitchen. "Was that my whole purpose?" The rain intensified, and somewhere in its rhythm, she heard something else, not an answer, but an invitation to keep listening. For the first time in 3 decades, Patricia hadn't set an alarm. She'd awakened anyway at 5:48 a.m., her body's internal clock refusing to accept its obsolescence. The digital display glowed accusingly in the darkness. No meetings to prepare for, no presentations to rehearse, no youth crisis calls that sometimes came before dawn. She lay there, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy rotation, feeling the weight of irrelevance settle into her bones. Her phone sat silent on the nightstand. Once it had buzzed with urgency. Board members, social workers, teenagers who'd aged out of foster care and still called her when life got too heavy. Now it might as well have been a paperweight. Rolling out of bed felt like surrender. To what? To nothing. Patricia pulled on her robe, not the professional blazer she'd worn like armor, but soft terry cloth that made her feel ancient. In the bathroom mirror, she saw someone she didn't recognize. A woman without deadlines, without people depending on her wisdom, without a reason to put on makeup at 6 a.m. "Lord, I built something that mattered," she said to her reflection. "Didn't I?" The mirror offered no comfort, only the truth of laugh lines earned through years of advocating for kids everyone else had written off. Those lines had meant something yesterday. Today, they just meant old. Patricia's phone buzzed during her 3rd cup of coffee. LinkedIn notification. Congratulations to Maria Valdezon, her promotion to executive director. Maria, who Patricia had mentored from an anxious intern to a confident leader. The announcement included a photo of Maria at Patricia's old desk, surrounded by the team Patricia had built, working on the fall fundraiser Patricia had created 15 years ago. The room tilted slightly. She scrolled through the comments, former board members praising Maria's fresh vision, staff members excited about new directions, donors pledging support for innovative approaches. Not one mention of the foundation Patricia had laid, not one acknowledgement that every system Maria would use, Patricia had fought to establish. Her throat tightened. This wasn't jealousy. She'd chosen Maria specifically for her ability to evolve the organization. But seeing it evolve without her, seeing how seamlessly she'd been replaced, felt like watching her own funeral through a window. Patricia set down the phone and walked to her home office, though. Calling it that seemed ridiculous now. The walls displayed photos from every graduating class of their youth program. Hundreds of faces she'd helped navigate from trauma to triumph. They smiled at her from their frames, frozen in moments when she'd mattered. "But do I matter now?" she asked the empty room. The silence that answered felt infinite. The produce section at Safeway shouldn't have been a place for divine intervention, but God had always preferred ordinary stages. Patricia was examining avocados with the focus of someone who had nothing else urgent to do when she heard the voice. "Miss Chun." "My gad, Miss Chun." Patricia turned to see a young woman, late 20s, professional clothes, confident posture, rushing toward her with a toddler in the cart. The face was familiar, but changed, matured from the frightened 15-year-old who'd shown up at the youth center with everything she owned in a trash bag. "Destiny," Patricia breathed. "Destiny Williams? It's Destiny Morrison now," the woman beamed, gesturing to the child. "This is Emma, Ms. Chun. I've been trying to find you since I heard you retired. I needed to tell you," her voice cracked. "I'm a social worker now. Because of you. Because you told me I could be anything except what my circumstances predicted." Patricia's carefully constructed composure crumbled here in the fluorescent wilderness of Safeway, between the organic bananas and conventional apples. Her former purpose reached forward to touch her present emptiness. "You saved my life," Destiny continued, tears flowing freely. "Not with programs or funding or systems. With Tuesday afternoons, when you taught me to pray instead of panic. With that breathing technique you called flowing with God's rhythm when my anxiety got bad. You taught me God doesn't retire from loving us, so why should we retire from purpose?" The words hit Patricia like lightning. Destiny hugged her, taller Emma reaching out to touch Patricia's face with sticky fingers that felt like benediction. And then they were gone off to pediatrician appointments. In ordinary life built on extraordinary redemption. Patricia stood alone again, but the silence felt different, expectant rather than empty. Back home, Patricia opened her 2024 planner to October's pages. Blank, November, blank, December, blank. Each empty week stretched like accusation. She'd once juggled 17 meetings a week, managed million-dollar budget, coordinated services for 300 youths annually. Now, she couldn't fill a Tuesday afternoon. She grabbed a pen, determined to create structure. Monday, gym. But she'd quit the gym too many questions about how retirement was treating her. Tuesday, volunteer. Where? Every nonprofit in town knew her as an executive director. The identity shift to envelope stuffer felt impossible. Wednesday, lunch with room. Her former colleagues were building on her foundation, too busy for nostalgia. Her peers who'd retired seemed content with golf and grandchildren conversations that made Patricia feel like she was slowly dissolving. The pen hovered over Thursday. Nothing came. Friday, Saturday. The future stretched forward in merciless blankness, every day a reminder that Patricia Chun, who'd once changed lives, now couldn't even plan her own. She closed the planner harder than necessary. Outside, the neighbors' wind chimes played a melody. She didn't recognize something between mourning and possibility. Patricia listened, wondering if emptiness might be its own invitation. "What are you trying to show me?" she asked the blank pages. They offered no answer, only space. Patricia found herself at Barnes & Noble on Thursday, drawn to the self-help section like a moth to flame she knew would burn. The retirement books mocked her with their cheerful covers. "Your best chapter yet," "Freedom at Last," "The Golden Years Adventure." Each title felt like She picked up one promising second act success and flipped to a random page. "Now you finally have time for yourself. Learn pottery. Take that cruise. Your years of service a complete and joy, your reward." "Reward," Patricia muttered, shoving the book back. "Like I'm a dog who performed tricks and now gets to sleep by the fire." A younger woman nearby glanced over, probably wondering why this well-dressed retiree was talking to books. Patricia wanted to grab her shoulders, tell her, don't believe the lie, that contribution has an expiration date. Don't let them convince you that 65 means your wisdom becomes irrelevant. Your experience becomes quaint. Your voice becomes background noise. Instead, she moved to the spirituality section. Thomas, Merting, Airy, Knowing, authors who understood that purpose wasn't about production metrics. Her fingers found a slim volume on contemplative prayer, and it fell open to an underlined passage. God's call doesn't diminish with age. It deepens, transforms, flows into channels we couldn't perceive when we were rushing. Patricia bought the book, along with a journal she didn't know how to fill. At the register, the 20-something cashier chirped, enjoying retirement. I'm learning it's not about enjoyment, Patricia heard herself say. It's about metamorphosis. The cashier's confused smile followed her out into the rain. Saturday morning, Patricia sat in the back row of the 7 a.m. service at Grace Cathedral, early enough that only the deeply devoted or deeply troubled attend. She'd chosen this service specifically for its anonymity. No one here knew her as Executive Director Chun, the woman who transformed youth services across the county. The priest, ancient and gentle, read from Jeremiah. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Patricia had heard this verse 1,000 times, quoted it to countless discouraged teenagers. But sitting here in the shadow of stained glass, she heard it differently. The calling came before the career, before the title, before the nonprofit, before anyone knew her name or counted her accomplishments. Your calling, the priest continued, his voice barely above whisper, isn't what you do, it's who you're becoming. Career can end. Calling only transforms. The words pierced through months of confusion. Patricia had conflated her job with her purpose, her position with her identity. But destiny hadn't thanked her for strategic planning or grant writing. She'd remembered Tuesday afternoons and breathing prayers, the flowing rhythm of presence over productivity. After communion, Patricia knelt longer than usual. Show me the difference, she prayed, between what I did and who you're still calling me to be. Patricia had always been a strategic planner. Projections, quarterly benchmarks, measurable outcomes. Now, sitting on her back porch at dawn with the contemplative prayer book, she was learning a foreign language, listening without agenda. Don't seek answers, Merton advised. Seek the silence beneath questions. This went against every leadership training she'd absorbed. Fix problems, create solutions, drive change. But what if retirement wasn't a problem to solve but a threshold to cross? What if these empty hours weren't void but vessel? She set down the book and simply sat. New prayer list. No intercession agenda, just presence. The morning birds conducted their usual symphony, crows arguing, sparrows gossiping, one persistent woodpecker drumming hope into dead wood. Patricia had heard these sounds for 20 years but never really listened. Too busy, too focused, too important. Now she heard it. Life happening without her orchestration, beauty occurring without her permission, the world flowing in rhythm she'd been too rushed to notice. I've been Martha for 30 years, she whispered to the morning. Teach me to be Mary. A hummingbird appeared, hovering at the feeder she'd filled but never watched. Its wings beat 50 times per second in visible effort, creating the illusion of stillness. Patricia understood. Sometimes the hardest work looks like floating. Patricia tried to maintain her executive pace in retirement. 5 a.m. wake time. Efficient morning routine. Purposeful activities. But her body rebelled not with illness, but with a strange resistance, like moving through hell. Tasks that once took minutes now took hours. Writing a simple thank you note became an afternoon's meditation. Walking to the mailbox turned into a study in autumn light. Her internal CEO screamed about wasted time, but something deeper whispered, this is the tempo of transformation. Wednesday afternoon found her attempting to organize the Garagia project she'd allocated 2 hours to complete. 4 hours later, she sat surrounded by boxers of youth program memories, photos from camp, handwritten thank you letters, a teenager's poem about finding hope. Each artifact demanded attention, reverence, grief. She found a card from Jamal. Now, Dr. Jamal Harrison, written when he was 17. Miss Chun, you don't move at teenage speed or adult speed. You move at God's speed, slow enough to see us, fast enough to catch us when we fall. Patricia laughed through tears. Even then, the kids had seen what she couldn't. Her true gift wasn't efficiency, but presence. Not speed, but depth. Okay, God, she said to the cluttered garage. I'll stop racing toward relevance. Show me what emerges in slowness. Patricia discovered the coffee shop by accident or providence. Hidden on a side street, common grounds attracted neither the laptop crowd nor the rushed commuters, just locals with nowhere urgent to be, which now included her. She'd brought a book, but found herself watching instead. The barista, maybe 19, moved with dancer's grace despite a prominent limp. An elderly man sat by the window, sketching. Two middle-aged women played chess in fierce silence. Each person carried stories Patricia would never have noticed in her rushing years. You're new, the barista observed, delivering Patricia's lavender latte without being asked. Sage, you have that look recently retired, still wearing your watch even though time doesn't own you anymore. Patricia glanced at her wrist. Caught the Rolex aboard gift for 20 years of service still dictated her rhythms. 3 months, Patricia admitted. Still adjusting to being instead of doing. Saji smiled. My grandmother says retirement is like learning to breathe underwater. Panic first, then you realize you were always a fish. Before Patricia could respond, Sage limped back to the counter. But the words lingered. Available, present, unscheduled. These weren't empty states, but sacred one space for divine appointments that couldn't be. Patricia removed her watch, placed it in her purse. Her wrist felt naked, free, ready. And what do you do? The question came at her sister's dinner party from a venture capitalist who collected people like business cards. Patricia had answered this question thousands of times. I'm the executive director of. But that sentence no longer belonged to her. The silence stretched awkwardly. I'm in transition, she finally said. Oh, looking for your next role. Let me connect you with... No, Patricia interrupted, surprising herself. I'm learning to exist without a role, to be Patricia without the subtitle. The man's confusion was palpable. In his world, the world she'd inhabited for decades, you were your position. Without title, you were invisible, irrelevant, socially untethered. But Patricia was discovering something revolutionary. She still existed. Without business cards, without letters after her name, without an organization's mission to define her purpose, Patricia Chun continued. Quieter? Yes. Simpler? Certainly. But somehow more essential. Later, helping her sister clean up, Patricia found herself humming something she hadn't done in years. You seem different, her sister observed. Lighter? Maybe, like you've put down something heavy. I have, Patricia realized. I've put down the weight of being somebody. Turns out I can just be. Her sister paused, hands deep in soapy water. That terrifies me, the thought of not being needed. It terrified me too, Patricia admitted, until I realized being needed and being valuable aren't the same thing. One requires proof, the other just requires presence. The clock read 3:47 a.m. when Patricia woke not with anxiety, but with clarity sharp as winter stars. She'd been dreaming of water, of learning to float after years of swimming against current. But this wasn't a dream's fading echo. This was summons. She slipped out of bed, drawn to the kitchen window where moonlight painted everything silver. The words came without thought, without plan. The grandmothers. Find the grandmothers. Patricia had no idea what it meant. Grandmothers. She wasn't even a grandmother herself, but the phrase carried weight, authority, the kind of divine insistence she'd learned not to ignore during her years of building impossible programs from nothing but faith. She grabbed the journal she'd barely touched and wrote in the darkness. The grandmothers who raised grandchildren while their own children battled addiction. The grandmothers whose wisdom saved families but who never made it onto nonprofit boards. The grandmothers who pray at bus stops and heal in food pantries and profit in laundromats. Her pen moved faster, downloading something that felt less like idea and more like assignment. Create space for their voices. Not another program, God. No more programs, but something flowing, organic, honoring. By the time dawn touched the horizon, Patricia had filled 12 pages, not with strategic plans or outcome measurements, but with a vision of grandmothers teaching what no curriculum could contain: how to love through breaking, how to hope past evidence, how to mother the motherless world. This, she asked, the morning light. This is my calling, continuing. The sunrise answered in color she'd been too busy to see for 30 years. Patricia's phone rang during her morning coffee. Maria, her successor, sounded frazzled. Patricia, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's a situation. Remember Keisha Thompson? She's aging out of foster care next month, and she's specifically asking for you. Says you're the only one who understands her grandmother's death. I know you're retired, but the old Patricia would have immediately taken over, solved the crisis, stepped back into role. But this, Patricia paused, feeling for the flow beneath the urgency. I'll meet with her, Patricia said slowly, not as executive director, not as program staff, just as someone who's learning what it means to lose who you thought you were. The meeting happened at Common Grounds. Keisha, 18 and terrified, carried her grandmother's death like a stone in her chest. Patricia didn't offer programs or resources or 5-year plans. She offered presence, stories of her own displacement, the radical honesty of saying, I don't know what comes next either. But you always knew, Keisha protested. You always had answers. I had programs, Patricia corrected gently. Now I have something else. Space to sit with you in the not knowing, time to help you listen for what's being born in the darkness. They sat for 3 hours. Patricia taught Keisha the breathing prayer Destiny had remembered, the one Patricia had called flowing with God's rhythm. She shared about waking at 3:47 a.m. with strange clarity, about learning that calling outlasts career. When Keisha left, she hugged Patricia with fierce gratitude. You're different, better, different, like you finally slowed down enough for your soul to catch up. Patricia found herself rereading her old annual reports. 20 years of quantified impact, served 5,000 youth, raised $3.2 million. Achieved 89% program completion rate. Numbers that had once validated her existence now felt hollow as empty picture frames. But Destiny's face in Safeway hadn't been about numbers. Keisha's breakthrough hadn't required metrics. The grandmother visions at 3:47 a.m. couldn't be measured in grant language. She started a new list in her journal, sat with Keisha through the valley of the shadow, learned Sage's name at the coffee shop, removed my watch, found God's timing, discovered silence holds more than sound, let go of being somebody, became myself. These wouldn't impress any board of directors. They'd never justify a salary or secure funding. But Patricia felt their weight, not the heavy weight of obligation, but the substantial weight of truth. Like river stones, worn, smooth by flow, her phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Another post about Maria's innovative leadership, complete with data visualizations and impact projections. Patricia smiled and deleted the app entirely. I'm not building anymore, she told her husband that evening. I'm aligning with something slower and deeper than achievement. He studied her face, seeing something new there. It suits you. This flowing instead of forcing. Patricia hadn't used that word flowing, but yes, that's exactly what was happening. The grinding had stopped. The flowing had begun. The grandmothers began appearing everywhere. Like once you learn a new word, you hear it constantly. At the grocery store, a grandmother teaching her grandson to select produce while his mother was in rehab. At the library, a grandmother helping 3 grandchildren with homework while their parents worked double shifts. At the park, a grandmother pushing a stroller, aged body, doing what it must. Patricia didn't approach them with programs or solutions. She approached with recognition, with witnessing, with the simple words, I see you. One grandmother, Agnes, sat alone at Common Grounds every Thursday, knitting prayers into blankets for the Pregnancy Crisis Center. Patricia joined her one morning. No agenda except presence. "Retired?" Agnes asked without looking up from her needles. "Recovering," Patricia answered. Agnes laughed. "Rich and knowing. From the addiction to importance." "Yes, that's a 12-step program nobody talks about. I was a federal judge for 30 years. Now I knit blankets and raise my daughter's babies while she finds herself in Seattle." They sat in companionable silence, two women who'd commanded rooms now commanding only their own breath. Then Agnes said something that shifted Patricia's universe. "The real ministry happens after the spotlight moves on, when nobody's watching, documenting, applauding. That's when you discover if you were serving the work or serving the recognition." Patricia felt the truth of it in her bones. These quiet assignments, listening to Keisha, sitting with Agnes, seeing the invisible grandmothers, this was soul-flowing, not the branded program she might have created in her former life, but the actual flow of soul meeting soul in the margins. The call came on a Tuesday, not from Maria or the nonprofit world, but from Sage at the coffee shop. "There's a grandmother here. She's been sitting for 3 hours with an eviction notice. She raised 4 grandkids, and now she's losing everything. I thought maybe you'd know what to do." Patricia arrived to find Dorothy dignified despite disaster, hands steady around her coffee cup like it was the last solid thing in a dissolving world. "I don't need another social worker," Dorothy said before Patricia could speak. "I've been through those systems. They want documentation. I don't have proof of guardianship that was never formal, income verification for under-the-table work that kept us alive." Patricia sat down. "I'm not a social worker. I'm just someone learning that the most important work happens without paperwork." For the next 2 hours, Patricia didn't strategize or problem solve. She listened to Dorothy's story of raising her daughter's children when drugs took her, of working 3 jobs in her 60s, of being invisible to systems that only recognized official guardians, official poverty, official crises. Then Patricia did something the old executive director Chun never could have done. She made phone calls not to systems but to people. Agnes, who knew a landlord. Her sister, who knew a lawyer. 3 former board members who'd wondered how they could help now that you're not running programs. Within a week, Dorothy's rent was covered for 6 months through what Patricia called the Underground Railroad of grandmothers. No nonprofit involved, no tax-deductible receipts, no press release about innovative approaches to senior housing crises. "This is backwards," her husband observed. "You're doing more with less structure than you ever did with $1 million budget." "No," Patricia corrected. "I'm doing less with more presence. There's a difference between serving the need and serving the need to be needed." Patricia woke at 5:42 a.m. on a Thursday in November, and for the first time since retirement, she didn't immediately calculate what she should be doing. No mental list of productive activities, no anxiety about no desperate grasping for purpose. She lay there, aware of breath moving through her body like tide through a channel. This was what soul-flowing actually meant, not another methodology to master, but a release into rhythm she'd always been part of but too driven to feel. Her husband stirred beside her. "You're awake but not getting up. Are you okay?" "I'm practicing," Patricia said. "Practicing what?" "Being awake without agenda, present without performance. It's harder than running a nonprofit, honestly, but also more true." She rose slowly, moved to the kitchen, made coffee with attention she'd never given it before, measuring water like prayer, watching grounds bloom in hot water like revelation. Each small action felt complete, not a step toward something more important, but important in itself. The morning light arrived gradually, and Patricia noticed she was moving with it rather than racing ahead. When had she stopped checking her phone immediately? When had she stopped mentally organizing everyone else's day? When had she become someone who could sit at a kitchen table and simply be? The transformation hadn't been dramatic, no road to Damascus moment. Just a slow dissolving of old patterns, like salt in water, until Patricia flowed clear. The community center called in early December. Would Patricia consider teaching a workshop for retiring professionals? Something about transition, the coordinator said vaguely. You seem to have figured something out. The old Patricia would have created handouts, strategic frameworks. This Patricia showed up with only presence and truth. I expected retirement to feel like completion, she told the 12 anxious faces. Instead, it felt like death, not physical death, but ego death. The death of who I thought I was. A man in a $1,000 suit flinched. A woman with CEO posture took notes like her life depended on it. But here's what nobody tells you, Patricia continued, that death is labor pain. Something new is being born, but it can't arrive until you stop clenching around your old identity. She taught them about 3:47 a.m. wake-ups that weren't anxiety, but announcement, about learning to move at grandmother's speed, slow enough to see, steady enough to sustain, about the difference between productivity and presence, between grinding and flowing. I call it soul flowing, she said, the words arriving unbidden. Not because it's a method to master, but because your soul knows how to flow if you stop damming it up with doing. One woman started crying. I've been retired 6 months, and I've been so ashamed of not knowing who I am anymore. The not knowing is the doorway, Patricia offered gently. Walk through it. Everything real is on the other side. Christmas approached, and Patricia received an unexpected invitation. Destiny wanted her to speak at the foster care alumni holiday gathering, young adults who'd aged out of the system, gathering for chosen family celebration. But I want you to come as yourself, Destiny specified, not as former executive director, just as Ms. Chun, who taught us to breathe. Patricia arrived to find 40 young adults, many she'd known as teenagers, now navigating adulthood with varying degrees of success. Some thriving, like Destiny, others barely surviving, all carrying stories heavier than their years. She didn't give an inspirational speech about overcoming odds. Instead, she told them about losing herself after retirement, about learning that identity isn't achievement, about discovering flow after a lifetime of forcing. You think you're behind? She said, looking at faces that had never had traditional starts. Because you didn't follow the normal timeline. But maybe you're actually ahead. You already know that titles don't define you, that systems won't save you, that the real work happens in the margins. You're already living what took me 65 years to learn. A young man, Marcus, whom she remembered as a furious 15-year-old, raised his hand. Ms. Chun, you're saying our broken places are actually our wise places. Patricia felt tears rise. I'm saying your broken places are where the light flows through. My retirement broke me open the same way. Now I'm finally flowing instead of performing. After, they didn't line up to network or exchange contacts. They lined up to hug her, to whisper their 3 a.m. fears, to share their own moments of flowing past trauma into truth. Your real legacy isn't the programs, Destiny told her. It's showing us that falling apart is sometimes how we come together. The idea came fully formed. Like dawn arriving all at once instead of gradually, Patricia woke, knowing exactly what the grandmother assignment meant. She started simply, an invitation posted at Common Grounds, the library, the community center, for women over 50 who wake before dawn with purpose, but no position. For those learning to flow after years of forcing, for grandmothers, godmothers, and spiritual mothers raising the world in the margins. Meet at Common Grounds, Tuesdays, 5 a.m. Come as you are. Leave as you're becoming. The first Tuesday, 3 women came. Agnes, with her knitting. Dorothy, with her dignity, despite eviction. A new face, Carmen, recently widowed, lost without her husband's needs to organize around. Patricia didn't facilitate or structure. She simply opened space. What's dying in you? What's being born? By the 4th Tuesday, 12 women gathered in the pre-dawn darkness. CEOs and cleaning ladies, judges and grocery clerks, all learning the same lesson. When external purpose ends, internal purpose deepens. They called themselves the 5 a.m. Sisters, not an organization, but an organism, flowing with whoever needed to show up. Some mornings they prayed. Some mornings they raged. Some mornings they sat in silence while a coffee shop filled with rushing people who didn't know that these invisible women were holding the world together with their presence. "This is church," Agnes declared one morning. "Not the building kind, the being kind." January arrived with unusual snow. Seattle transformed into stillness. Patricia walked through the neighborhood she'd driven through for decades, finally seeing it. Each house held stories. Each bare tree promised resurrection. Each footprint in snow proved presence, then disappeared. She found herself at the small park where she'd once rushed through lunch calls, managing crises between bites. Now she sat on the same bench, no phone in hand, watching chickadees navigate frozen branches with impossible grace. "You were always here," she said to the life she'd been too busy to witness. "This flowing world, moving in God's timing, not mine." A text arrived from Maria. The nonprofit had won a national award for the youth program Patricia had created. "This is your victory," Maria wrote. "We're standing on your shoulders." Patricia felt the old pull to claim credit, to resurrect relevance, to matter again in measurable ways. Then she looked at the chickadees, considered their complete indifference to awards, their total commitment to the moment's necessity. She texted back, "Beautiful. Keep building. I'm learning to be instead." Maria's response was immediate. "That might be the most radical thing you've ever done." Patricia smiled, tucked her phone away, returned to watching winter do its quiet work of preparing spring. She was in no rush. God's timing had become her rhythm, and that rhythm was teaching her to flow like seasons, letting things die completely so new life could emerge without forcing. Patricia stood before the bathroom mirror on a February morning, truly seeing herself for the first time in months. Not the executive director ghost she'd been mourning, not the irrelevant retiree she'd feared becoming, but this actual woman, 65, gray threading through black hair like wisdom, through experience. Eyes that had learned to see in the dark. "Your season is not over," she said to her reflection, and meant it. The phone rang. Keisha, now stable in transitional housing, working part-time while finishing her GED. "Ms. Chun, I got into the community college program, but I'm scared. What if I'm too broken from everything that happened?" "Listen," Patricia said, feeling the words flow from someplace deeper than advice. "You're not broken. You're broken open. There's a difference. Broken things get thrown away. Broken open things become vessels. Pour yourself out, Keisha. The world needs what flows through your cracks." After the call, Patricia opened her journal, no longer empty, but flowing with insights. Connections, the underground network of grandmothers and daughters and sisters learning to move at heaven's pace. She wrote, "This is for you, reading this at 3 a.m. or 3 p.m., wondering if your contribution years are over. For you who gave everything to career and now feel erased. For you whose title was taken but whose calling remains. Shifting, deepening, flowing into forms you couldn't imagine when you were too busy to listen. Your season is not over. It's transforming. You're not being put out to pasture. You're being planted in deeper soil. The world that measures worth in metrics cannot see your value now, but God measures in presence, in availability, in the slow work of souls, meeting souls without agenda. Stop grinding against the current of this transition. Start flowing with it. Your 3:47 a.m. wake-up isn't anxiety, it's annunciation. Your empty calendar isn't void, it's canvas. Your lost identity isn't death, it's birth. Find your 5 a.m. sisters. Find your common grounds. Find the grandmothers everyone else overlooks. Find the Keishas who need your broken open heart more than your executive solutions. This is Soul Flowing, not a program to join, but a river to enter. The same river you've always been part of, but were too driven to feel. Christian women over 50. Your morning routine with God doesn't have to be another performance. It can be a flowing, a allowing, a becoming. The retirement they sold you is a lie. The real invitation is so much deeper: to serve without spotlight, to matter without metrics, to flow past everything you thought defined you into everything you're still becoming. Patricia closed the journal, walked to her window where dawn was breaking over Seattle. Somewhere, grandmothers were waking at 5 a.m. to raise babies, not their own. Somewhere, women were losing careers and finding calling. Somewhere, someone was learning that soul flowing wasn't about productivity but presence, not about grinding but grace. She thought of Margaret Ann Robertson, whom she'd never met, but somehow knew another woman who'd discovered flowing past 3 a.m. anxiety into morning mercies. Thought of all the unnamed women learning the same lesson in their own kitchens and coffee houses and cathedral silences. The light grew stronger, and Patricia felt it, the flow she'd been seeking, finding, becoming, not the rush of her executive years, but something deeper, steadier, truer, a river that had been flowing long before her career and would continue long after, carrying her not to relevance but to reality. This was soul flowing. This was the calling that couldn't retire. This was purpose without expiration date, not because she was needed, but because she was available. Not because she was somebody, but because she was finally herself. Patricia Chun thought her purpose ended with her executive title. She thought 65 meant irrelevance, that retirement meant her contribution years were over. She was wrong. Not optimistically wrong, not cheerfully wrong, but transformationally wrong. Your season is not over. It's changing form. If you're waking at 3:47 a.m., that's not anxiety, it's announcement. God is downloading something that can only be received in stillness. If your calendar is empty, that's not void, it's vessel, waiting to be filled with the kind of purpose that can't be measured in annual reports. The grandmothers know this secret, the ones raising their children's children while the world looks away, the ones serving without spotlight in laundromats and food pantries and bus stops. They understand soul flowing, not grinding against life's current, but moving with God's rhythm, slow enough to see, present enough to matter in ways no metric can measure. This is your invitation to the 5 a.m. Sisters, to the underground railroad of women over 50, discovering that when external purpose ends, internal purpose deepens. We're not learning productivity, we're learning presence, not time management, but divine timing. Not how to matter again, but how to flow into a mattering that transcends measurement. Find your common grounds, find your kishas, who need your broken open wisdom more than your polished expertise. Find the silence at dawn, where God whispers assignments that would never fit in strategic plans. Stop trying to resurrect your old identity. Let it die completely so something truer can be born. Stop grinding against this transition. Start flowing with it. This is Soul Flowing, not another program to master, but a river to enter. The same river you've always been part of, but we're moving too fast to feel. Christian women over 50. Your morning routine with God is about to become revolutionary. Not because you'll be doing more, but because you'll finally be flowing with the one who's been waiting for you to slow down enough to hear. Your calling is not over. It's only just beginning to flow. Welcome to Soul Flowing. Welcome to the purpose that doesn't retire. Welcome to becoming who you were always meant to be, after everything you thought you were falls away. The world needs your presence more than it ever needed your productivity. Flow with that truth. Everything else follows.